As a relatively new guitar player, I've been playing and diving heavily into music theory for about 2.5 years now. I've relied heavily on the smartChord app as my number one resource to support my learning of music theory and build my overall fretboard mastery. As I got further and further into understanding modes, patterns, and breaking down the fretboard into smaller chunks, triads, and even dyads, I longed for a way to isolate my view of the fretboard in a more customizable way. The fretboard can be overwhelming at times, and there's often so much extraneous information when looking at it that it complicates and hampers the learning process. I wanted to shut off portions of the fretboard in a way that would allow me to better see the things I was specifically trying to comprehend and practice. I reached out to the developers of my favorite music app and presented them with my ideas and rationale for building this customizable learning interface within their app, and what resulted was this new Fretboard Explorer mode. It was such an enjoyable process collaborating with the people at smartChord, and I'm thankful for their willingness to implement this for me and their users. I'm unbelievably excited from both a personal learning perspective as well as from an instructional perspective, as I think this mode will be of great benefit to guitar instructors and their students. I hope you'll enjoy it as well. I'm going to take a few minutes now to give a breakdown of the features of this new app mode, as well as a few ideas about how you might use it. Forgive my mediocre video production skills and enjoy. This is a video introduction to the features and some possible uses of the Fretboard Explorer in smartChord. You can find the icon here on the home screen and you click it and enter. The default view will typically be whatever the view was the last time you left. I think that this would be likely the first view you'd see, but I'll start here. So when you come in, you're going to see a chromatic layout, and it'll be in C here. You can see that C is the root. The first thing you'll notice is the key slider will let you change keys instantly. Now you can go to D, you can go to F, you can go back. From here, you can look at the scale favorites, and when you go to scale favorites, you'll see the familiar scale favorite choices, and from there you can select what I'm going to select to show is C major. It'll then populate C major. Next to the Fretboard Explorer name, it'll show the scale that you're in. And then what you can do, and you can do this anytime, but I saved it for this, is if you're in C and you wanted to just look at triads, say, of C major, you can turn off everything but the C notes. Gives you a little arpeggio. But what you can also do here is you can still see the skeleton of the scale form that you're working in. If you want to actually break things down a little bit further, you can come here to the fretboard range, turn on the selector, and then you can slide, say for example, to 2 and 8, and you'll get this shape that everyone probably knows, or most people know, and you'll get this shape here too, and roots of C. And then even in here, you could do something like just looking at the 5 chord, just looking at the 4 chord, all within the context of C major. One other thing you can do here is, say you are working in C major, but you wanted to go to a pentatonic. If you know the right ones to get rid of, you can just dump the major 7 and the perfect 4th, and then you're looking at the major pentatonic boxes. So that's also nice when you're first starting, trying to not get confused, but see quickly between the two. Jumping back out to a 1 through 12 view, and relighting all the notes. You can then hide strings. And so if you just wanted to work on triads on the 1, 2, and 3, you could do that here. If this was a little bit hard for you to tell what it was, you can then again go back down to just looking, and you can even extend it a little if you want. Just looking at the triads for C. Just looking at the triads that contain C and F major. You throw in the D and the B, you'll have all of them full. But again, you can focus on the 1, the 4, and the 5 if you want, and any variation, minor or major. Additionally, of course, you can go string by string, getting 3 string triads. You can grab 4, and then you can also do the 4 down the middle, looking at, say, C major also, but it works for any of them. And then you can see the 3 primary shapes running down from major down the 4 middle strings. Now, still in this view, the next thing that you'll need to know is that the reset button upon the first press is going to reset you to C major, all strings on, all notes on. So that's just a quick way to reset. And then a second press is going to take you back to the default state that isn't constrained to any given scale or chord, which I'll get to in a second. So when you come back out, you're again in a chromatic with C here. Another interesting thing that you can do is, if you have the ability or knowledge to do it, you can do things like this. You can shut down all the flats and sharps in C, the minors and augmenteds, and I'll do it from like an interval perspective. You can still see them here, but I've shut them off, so now we've got C major. In this mode, all cleared out with nothing listed here, you can now do something like this. You can come down and go to D, and you'll instantly be seeing D Dorian because the root will shift, but all the notes that you've lit are still the same notes. They're still the C major notes, now shifted one mode to Dorian. You can then go to Phrygian and still see it just right there. You can go down to Mixolydian and so on and so forth to A minor, but they all hold true. Of course, remember, if you go to a note that is not in the key of C, it's going to get wonky. So you'll probably want to avoid that unless it's beyond me music theory wise. Maybe there's some reason to do it. But you're going to be in A sharp here. And the A sharp or B flat is not lit. One other thing you can do for modal exploration is, if you were to shut this down here and you're just thinking only about C, you can also look at the association between one mode and another mode. If I shift over to intervals, this is in C major. If you drop the major 7 to a minor 7, you're going to have Mixolydian. Bring that back. If you drop or put the 4 to an augment, then you're going to have Lydian. And you can do that for all the modes, those single 1 or 2 note shifts to all stay in the context of C, but be different in a different mode. Another thing that's I think is cool for exploring would be something like shutting down part of the board if it makes it easier, and looking at shapes and then realizing that the Phrygian has the 1 is minor, and when you know these shapes are major shapes, this is a major triad, minor triad, diminished triad, so the B would be diminished, and it's just kind of gives you a feel for what the chord progressions might be modally. And then too, you can still, as always, isolate. So I'll just reset, go back to C, and then the next thing I'll show you is another idea to work on. Fretboard knowledge would be something as simple as going into C major and just working on note location. just want to work on where are those C's, where are the B's, where are the D's, etc. Additionally, you can look at something like interval spacing and location relative to a certain note. So if you want to go, here's a 1 to a 3, or a 1 to a 4, or 1 to a 5, and if you just want to see those in the context of a dyad. Another thing for newer players that are just starting out and they're just learning the fretboard, don't know the notes, the names, the scales, starting off slow and easy, you can have them looking at the app, shut down everything but one string, maybe drone a low C note at a slow BPM, and then just have them play over the top of this single string in the scale of C major, and even focusing on resolving to the root and hitting the 3 and the 5, and then you can just switch strings so they'd be hearing major sounds, getting used to that, understanding how the scales worked, how the root note worked, but also learning note names at the same time. And then if you wanted to shift over, you go to A minor and do the same thing. They'd be seeing it with root A instead of C, and then you could drone like a lower A note for the bass line. Again, one single reset, double reset, just for a reminder. And then moving over here to Chord Choose, you can select any chord you want in your favorites. So say D diminished maybe, if I can find it in my big list. And it'll throw that triad up. You can come in and do D major 7, and you'll get that. And then 2, you can also just go to that triad and look at that, and you can also see the other triad that's there. So there's other things you can do with this. And then the last thing would be, if you're in chord or scale in both locations, if I were to say, pick something like C Phrygian, let's make it E. So for an E Phrygian, and you're working on things here, but you want to go and explore a little bit, you can drop down, grab Fretboard Explorer here, and it'll automatically jump you back into the Fretboard Explorer with E Phrygian lit.